chapter 5, verses 21 to 43. When Jesus had crossed again into the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue, named Jairus, came, and when he saw him, fell at his feet, and pleaded with him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, so that she may be made well and live." So he went with him.
And a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from a flow of blood for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians and had spent all that she had, and she was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. For she said, "If I but touch his cloak, I will be made well." Immediately, her flow of blood stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Immediately aware that power had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my cloak?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, 'Who touched my cloak? Who touched me?'" And so he looked all around to see who had done it, but the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease."
And while he was still speaking, some people came from the synagogue leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the synagogue leader, "Do not be afraid, only believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And when they had come to the synagogue leader's house, he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. When he had entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. Then he put them all outside, and he took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where their child was. Taking her by the hand, he said to her, "Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was about 12 years of age. And at this, they were overcome with amazement. He strictly ordered them that no one should know this and told them to give her something to eat.
Thank you. Could we restart the video just from the beginning?
You okay?
I'm trying to get abducted.
There we go.
You need to meet people. Make friends. Your life isn't up there, Elio. It's down here.
You okay?
I'm trying to get abducted. By aliens. There's a sign I'm supposed to be up there. This mole is the exact shape of the Orion Nebula.
I think you should have that looked at.
Yes! I knew it! I knew it!
I'm Questa, leader of GOM.
Helix, leader of Voluvinum.
And you're the leader of?
Earth?
Hear that, everyone? It's the leader of our Earth.
Uh-oh. This is the most beautiful place I've ever seen.
This is the bathroom.
See us waving from such great heights.
So I went to watch Elio on a rainy evening with the boys a few weeks ago, and as the movie was ending, I knew that I wanted to include that movie in our God at the Movie series. So here we are to today. I changed things around to make it work. And I was surprised as I was looking online in preparation for today. The reviews aren't very good online. It really didn't do well at the box office, but I loved it. And I thought that it was a beautiful story of love and belonging. It's about an 11-year-old boy, Elio Solis, who has recently been orphaned by the death of his parents, and he lives with his aunt Olga. And Olga is a major in the Air Force who had dreams to become an astronaut, but has given that all up to raise Elio. And as many can imagine, it's tough for both of them.
Shmipa de Gumiba.
No, I'm not learning Elioese.
Bufiba Mujangle Gumi Shazzle.
Major Solis?
You going to the seminar tonight? There'll be a speaker from the astronaut selection program.
No, something came up.
Oh, is this the nephew we've heard so much about?
Yes, that's him.
Gluto.
Stop it. I don't know if this is boundary testing or sleep regression or... Which one of these is you?
I don't know, but I think that one is you.
Okay, I've got one last meeting, so I need you to sit here and not move or speak or injure yourself for 10 minutes. I have enough to deal with already.
Elio is not happy on Earth, and every day he has a dream of being abducted by aliens, as you saw in the trailer. And so he overhears an emergency meeting that his Aunt Olga was called into, where one of the scientists thought that they found evidence of aliens sending a message to them and wanting to send a message back to them. Well, Olga thinks that that's just outrageous and not true. She dismisses it. But Elio hears of this, is in on this meeting, accidentally hiding, and he sneaks into the room that they were in and uses the scientist's device to send a message, and it caused the entire military base to lose power, and it almost costs Olga her job. So she sends Elio to a youth camp just to, not have to deal with him for a period of time. And in that camp, there are some bullies. And just as he is about to get beat up by the bullies, everything pauses, and an alien ship arrives and abducts him. And inside the spaceship, he is welcomed to the Communiverse, a place where aliens from different worlds share their knowledge. And here's what happens.
We search the universe for like-minded souls and new species, and we think you're an excellent candidate for Communiverse membership.
You mean I could stay here?
If all the members agree, then yes.
So 11-year-old Elio is known as Earth's ambassador to everyone in the Communiverse. For him, it's a chance at life, a new chance that he has really wanted since his parents died. I wonder if you've ever wanted a chance at new life. When was the last time that you wanted a do-over or a fresh start? Well, we have two stories today. We have the story of Elio, and we have the story that you heard earlier from Mark's Gospel, which is actually two stories in one. So there's a few stories at play. But in the story from Mark's Gospel, there are a few people in it that are looking for a fresh start. Mark is a writer who jumps from story to story very quickly. I think you heard the word immediately a few times in that one passage. And if you were with us last week, you might remember the story of Jesus driving demons out of a man and putting them into pigs that then went and drowned. Well, this comes right after that. He's returning from that adventure with the disciples, and he's getting out of the boat, and he's met by Jairus, who is the leader of the synagogue. Now, back then, leadership was given to those who were wealthy and able to afford certain things for the building and for synagogue life. And so Jairus, is a man of high esteem, and he's putting himself in a very vulnerable position when he asks Jesus to go and to put his hands on his daughter who has died or is in the process of dying, hoping that she will be made well again. So Jesus goes ahead with him, but along the way, he's interrupted. And so there's this interruption in our story as well. This large crowd presses in on him, right? The story of the hemorrhaging woman being healed is one of my favorite healing stories in all of the Gospels. After 12 years of bleeding, this woman just touches Jesus once, and she's healed. And when Jesus discovers who she is, he tells her that his faith has made her well to go in peace and to be healed. But what's interesting is that there's some connections between these two stories that Mark intertwines together, because both involve people who are desperate for a miracle, both desperate for healing. Jairus' daughter is 12 years old. This woman has been bleeding for 12 years. Jairus is a very wealthy person, and this woman, because of her condition, is not very wealthy at all. She's been ostracized by her community, but both of them are valuable to Jesus. And so as soon as Jesus says goodbye to this woman, we're back to the story of Jairus' daughter once again, only this time we find out that Jesus' stop to do this healing made him too late. The girl has died. It seems like there's no use for him to be there anymore. But I want to talk about the interesting characters that come up at this point. So there are people outside of Jairus' house. They're the ones that come out and say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any longer?" And I think those friends really need to work on their compassion. They're very blunt, right? And just saying, this is a done deal. It is what it is. But there's Jesus then who responds to Jairus saying, "Do not fear, only believe." And then when we walk inside the house, there are people who are weeping and are wailing, and these are thought, some historians have said that those might be professional mourners. That was something back then, it was very common for people to be hired to mourn when there's a death of someone. And so what's odd is that when Jesus questions them and says that the girl is not dead, their mourning turns into laughter. So not very professional. Again, they need to work on their compassion. But then there's Jairus and his wife, and Jesus sends everyone out of the room and invites the couple into the room, and it's as if he wants to clear the toxicity that's happening out of the space to do this healing. And then there's the girl, the one who isn't given a name, but we know that when Jesus simply says, "Talitha cum," she wakes up. I wonder if you could put yourself in this story, knowing all those characters. Who would you be right now? Perhaps you're the people that are coming out of Jairus' house, telling it like it is. Maybe the circumstances in your life currently make it difficult for you to find hope. Maybe you're in a similar boat as these professional mourners that aren't really too far off the friends. Whether you can professionally mourn or not, you have some doubts about the unexplainable happening or that there's divine intervention at work in the world, right? Or perhaps you're like Jairus and his wife, unafraid to be vulnerable, to come before Jesus with this expectation that healing will happen in times of trouble. No matter where you find yourself in this story, I wonder if all of us are looking for some good news and some new life. Elio takes an interesting turn when he meets Lord Grygon in the Communiverse. And as you can see in this photo, he's a very scary character. He's a warlord, and he comes in wanting to be an ambassador for the Communiverse from his own planet, but he is very divisive, seems very steamed, and they say to him, "We don't really want that kind of anger here in our Communiverse," so they reject him. And he is so upset at being rejected that he plans to take the Communiverse by force, and he threatens that he's going to do that. "I'm going to come away and destroy all of you." So Elio, hearing all of this, wanting to be accepted into the Communiverse, agrees to negotiate with Grygon. This 11-year-old boy is going to negotiate with Grygon. And during this negotiation, he is imprisoned, where he meets Grygon's son, Glordon. So as you can see, Glordon looks nothing like his father, but everyone from Glordon and Lord Grygon's planet looks like this. But they get this outer shell when they're older, like his father has, so that they can fight in war. So Elio uses Glordon as a bargaining chip in order to make peace between Grygon and the Communiverse. But in the process, Elio and Glordon become really close friends, and it's really neat to see these two different creatures, right, but both around the same age, becoming friends with one another. And Glordon confides in Elio that he doesn't want to be a war machine like his father. He just isn't interested in any of that. And Elio confides in Glordon about his own feelings with life in this really touching scene.
The only people who wanted me are gone. But I don't know. What if there's nothing about me to want? I thought Earth was the problem. But what if it's me?
Well, I like you. And you seem fine to me.
Honestly, I think it's sometimes hard to find good news in stories like the healing stories that we read today, especially if we feel like Elio. His parents didn't get saved. What's happened to him isn't fair at all. And so when Jesus raises someone from the dead, we might question, well, why doesn't that happen anymore? Have you ever questioned that in these healing stories? We don't hear many stories of people who were declared dead suddenly coming back to life. And so when we read these kind of miracles in our Gospels, we may wonder, if Jesus brought this girl back to life, then why didn't he do that for the one that I love? Or why doesn't he change my situation? There's a theologian named Terry Fretheim who puts things in an interesting light with this question of why that we're often faced with. And when we look back at the stories of Jesus' life, we learn that while Jesus healed many people with disease, he didn't eliminate all disease. Jesus calmed a storm when he was with the disciples at sea, but he didn't eliminate storms from ever happening again. And yes, Jesus raised this girl from the dead, but he didn't banish death. He really only resuscitated her, because she did eventually die again. Jesus is the only one that completely resurrected and never died again. Not everyone in the first century was able to be healed or restored. There was still hardship and loss of children. Life has inescapable suffering. It always has. But perhaps these miracles that we read in the Gospels are there as signs of an inbreaking of the kingdom of God. Maybe they're signs of what God desires for the world. You know, we don't have all the answers, but we do have a sign of the inbreaking of the kingdom of God. And perhaps that is enough reason for hope that one day we will experience the kingdom of God fully. But there's new life in this story in more ways than one. There's this common belief in the first century that sickness was related to someone having sinned. So that was very true of this woman who was hemorrhaging. She was ostracized from the community because of it. People had thought that, there was something wrong with her. She must have sinned to deserve what was happening to her. We know that that's not true anymore, but it was very common back then to believe that. So when someone was sick, their family would be ostracized from the community. And Jesus' healings then were not just about restoring physical health, but also spiritual health. Physical healing meant then that people were welcomed back into relationship with one another and into their community. So when this girl is restored back to life and when the woman is healed, they're both not just given new life, but they are given connection and community and belonging again. And so perhaps more than many other things, this miracle shows the restoration that Jesus offers is an invitation for people to come out of their sleeping states and have an opportunity to live and to thrive. Jesus didn't just raise people to life so they could continue in the same old way. Jesus raised people to new life so they could then thrive, so they could celebrate and be transformed. There's some really neat transformation scenes at the end of Elio. I wish I could have had clips of those, but because the movie is still in theaters, there was only so much that I could find at this point. Elio makes it back to Earth towards the end of the movie, and he reconciles with his aunt in this beautiful scene on the beach when she's looking for him, and he comes. And they realize that while they both are grieving at this enormous loss in their family, the gift that they have is each other. And so instead of feeling like a burden to his aunt, Elio realizes that he is deeply loved. But perhaps my favorite scene comes after that. So through a series of events that are going to take too long to explain, Glordon gets sent to Earth, and that's the reason that Elio goes back to Earth to try to save him. And so Elio and Olga work together to get Glordon back to the Communiverse and back to his father. All of that, however, threatens Glordon's life because he wasn't created to live on Earth. And so once Lord Grygon is reunited with his son and he sees him suffering and almost, at the end, they're not sure whether he's going to live or not, he rips his suit open. He comes out of it and he swaddles his son. And to us, it might look funny because it's like these two slugs that are holding each other. But it's this beautiful scene because he becomes so humble in that moment. No longer trying to be strong or trying to hide himself in a suit of armor that represents war. Now, he's just a dad that loves his son. And so he apologizes to all the ambassadors and to his son, and he decides to give up on all the meaningless fighting that he's been a part of. And in both of those transformations of Elio and Grygon, both of them are daring to see the joy and the love that is right in front of them and to claim that over everything else. I believe that Jesus is in the business of welcoming us as we are, understanding all the hot mess that is in our lives, and then longing to give us a do-over, helping us to see the joy and the love and the new life even in the midst of the mess. I want to share one more story with you. How many of you at your homes are still dealing with lantern flies? Anyone? I haven't seen any outside my home, but I've seen them in other places trying to kill them. Y'all remember a few summers ago when they were really bad, right? And they were everywhere, and you try to step on them and they, fly. And now they're in some other different form that's kind of speckled. Anyways, I had a pastor friend a few summers ago who told this story when they were really bad that one summer about lantern flies that had overtaken a tree in her backyard. And so she described that because she loves trees, she became a woman with a mission that day. And she went outside with a fly swatter and she killed hundreds of them. It was literally a massacre of lantern flies, right? And after this massacre, she took a walk with her husband. And as they were walking, she said, tonight would have been a really great night to have a fire in the fire pit. And he said, yeah, I was thinking that tonight would have been a good night for that too, but I didn't want to mention it because he said, I was too afraid that you would see the bugs and not the fire. And she reflected on what she called the wise discernment from her husband. I might have been tempted to be offended, but she said it was wise discernment from her husband because she is so prone in life to see bugs instead of the fire and instead of the tree. She's prone to focus on what is wrong rather than on what is beautiful. And when I heard that thought, I thought, man, me too. I feel like I am constantly reminding myself to focus on what is good instead of what is wrong. And, we can't ignore what is wrong. There's always wrong things that are happening in our world that create chaos in our lives, and it's good to acknowledge that and to see what we can do. But there's a distinction she makes here. She writes, I love my trees, and I love our fruit-bearing orchards and farmers. There is nothing wrong with identifying the illness that is happening and to work to remove it. The problem is when we allow the illness inside of our hearts. Not letting that illness inside our hearts is the difficult part, right? Because that's when the hatred and division happens, when we can snap in just a moment. I don't think the remedy to that is to just look on the bright side. But I think it's about looking for signs in our own life that Jesus is bigger than death and is longing to offer you new life. And the signs of it, I really think, are all around us if only we have eyes to see and ears to hear the good news. So this week, I have a challenge for you. Find one sign of new life in your own life. Maybe find one a day if that's easy for you, but if it's hard for you, just one this week. Maybe it's small, like a sports game or a pet that cheers you up, or maybe it's a meal that you made for yourself that was really good, even without a recipe. Whatever it is, commit to celebrating that. Because this gift that we've been given in Jesus Christ is a game changer for everything. Friends, you belong. You belong, and you are loved. And there are signs of that all around you. And if you don't believe that, then this is your sign that you belong and that you are loved. So where will you find new life?